Right then, so let's get started properly. So I'm just going to introduce Iain McClellan, who is our community chef at Greener Kirkcaldy, and it's his job to run the Langspoon Community Kitchen. So this means that he runs cooking classes to give people the skills to cook from scratch. He promotes local ingredients and cooking with leftovers, and he manages a team of cooking volunteers who help him prepare the weekly community meal takeaway and keep our community fridge stocked with ready meals. And of course, he delivers food events like this one. And just to big him up a little bit before he comes to speak to you himself, during the first period of lockdown, Iain and his team delivered 7,500 meals to local people who suddenly found themselves in need. And in the last 2.5 months has produced over 600 meals for our community in the takeaway service, which you can all, of course, help yourself to on Tuesdays. So it's no surprise Iain is our most popular member of staff because he basically gives everybody food. So Iain, how you doing? Had a busy day cooking, I think, yes?
It's been a busy few days actually. This is a busy week for us in Christmas, trying to give some of our volunteers some presents back for all the help they've gave us over a hard year. So yeah.
So just to get us thinking about Christmas food then, is Christmas a time that chefs usually look forward to? And how is it different now that you work for GK as opposed to when you used to work in restaurants?
Certainly was a challenging time of the year working in the hotel restaurant trade. Probably maybe the time you dreaded the most, the month of December. So busy, so high volume, big parties. So now I'm going to have a wee bit of time to relax and actually have Christmas dinner properly myself and the family. So it's going to be great this year.
And do you let the family help in the kitchen on Christmas Day, or is it all down to you?
It just depends how good they are at certain jobs. My wee one, she's 5.5. She can do the sprouts already, so she's on her way.
Perfect. And in one word, what's your favourite bit of Christmas dinner?
Sprouts.
Sprouts. And
I do like them.
Always controversial. Perfect. Right. Thank you for now. We'll come back to you soon. So the reason that we put on this event is to encourage people to cook with Christmas leftovers. And that's because food waste is such a big problem. So around 1/3 of all food that is produced across the world ends up getting chucked. And that's really terrible when you consider how many people are going hungry. And just think of all the resources, the water, the land, the energy, the effort that's gone into producing it. And it just ends up getting binned. And to make matters worse, of course, as it rots, it produces methane, which then contributes to climate change. And Christmas is a really wasteful time of year in many ways, but particularly when it comes to food. So let me just share with you my screen, and I want to show you some information from the food waste charity WRAP. Sorry. So here we go. So during the festive period, we buy a lot more food than we do the rest of the year. So as you can see that we love our mince pies, 370 million mince pies. We like a drink, and it's not a good time of year to be a turkey, basically. And overall, we eat about 80% more food than we do at other times of the year, but often we buy too much. And that sadly leads to some waste. Here's the other half of that graphic. I'll just move that out of the way. So we throw away 230,000 tons of food at Christmas time. So that's the equivalent of 74 million mince pies or 2 million turkeys. And it's the same weight as 18,000 double-decker buses. So that is a huge amount of waste that could be getting eaten. And it also hurts us in the pocket as well. So a recent study by food waste charity Hubbub found that knowing a few simple tips and applying a bit of forward planning would allow UK households to reduce that Christmas waste by 76%. Sorry, it will allow them to reduce their annual food waste by 76% and save themselves nearly £900 a year. And we could all do with that bit of cash right now over Christmas, I bet. So that's why we're doing this event. We're hoping that maybe we can make a little bit of dent in those really high, crazy food waste numbers. So I'm going to hand over to Iain now, just to introduce that very first recipe that we've got to share with you today. And I don't know if you want to say a little bit about food waste, Iain.
Yep. So as Craig says, food waste at Christmas is the highest of the whole year. So it's worth having a wee look at this time of the year to see if there's anything that can be done. Hopefully these recipes coming up will maybe inspire you to do a little bit more and think a little bit more, even out with the Christmas period. So the first recipe we've got is roasted potato skin soup with garlic and rosemary. It's maybe something people wouldn't think of using for soup, but it works pretty well. Have a look at the video, and if you have any questions, put it in the chat box. Right, so the first dish we're going to be making with the Christmas leftovers is a potato, rosemary and garlic soup, using the peelings from the roast potatoes. So the first thing we need to do with the peelings is roast them in the oven. So into a roasting tray, some garlic and rosemary, so sprinkle the rosemary. And just crush the garlic cloves. And just break these over the potato skins. So these will go into a high oven, as high as it goes, 220 to 250. We drizzle the olive oil. So I just want to roast these to get a bit extra flavour in the skins. So it'll take about 10 to 15 minutes. So when the potatoes come out of the oven, should have a nice colour on them. Should almost smell like baked potatoes. The garlic's in there been roasting as well. So, got onions, stock. You can add other veg as well, but if you keep it lighter coloured veg, it looks nicer. So stay away from carrots and parsnips if you've got. So, a wee bit of oil in the pan. Just put your onions in first. So we need to keep cooking these till the onions are soft. Then the potatoes with the garlic and rosemary and the stock will go in. Right, so this is what we're looking for with the onions. Nice golden colour, brings it the sweetness. So, whole tray in, that's the potatoes, the garlic and the rosemary. Make sure you get all the little pieces in. Alright, so all we need to do now is add the stock. Veg stock, any stock you like. And we just need enough stock just to cover the potatoes. Probably add just a little bit more. Right, so keep this on a high heat, and we just test after about 10 minutes to see if the potato is nice and soft, then it'll be ready to finish off. Right, so to test when the soup's ready to finish off, if you just put a knife, it should go through the skins pretty easily. Right. we're at this stage, we're going to use our wee hand blender just to puree. That one. So, this is the finished soup. You can add a little bit of cream to lighten it. If we get a bowl, firstly we need to taste it for seasoning. Do a spoon. Thank you. So we need to season it. When you're cooking with potatoes, it usually uses a little bit more salt than what you would imagine. So, salt, a bit of pepper. And that's it. So, plate it up. Portion it in the bowl. We'll put some croutons. Herb oil. It's just olive oil mixed with parsley and rosemary. Any herbs do. There we have it. So this is what we've got. This is potato skin, rosemary and garlic soup with croutons and a herb oil.
Over to Jennifer. Has there been any questions that have come in for Iain so far, or any comments? You have to unmute yourself. I put you on mute.
Okay, hello, can you hear me now?
That's perfect. Yes, anything come in?
Hi, yes, there are some questions. Now, Iain is such a talented chef. Not only can he cook the soup, but he can answer questions on the screen at the same time, thanks to the wonders of technology. But I'll read them out anyway, because perhaps not everyone has read them in the chat box. So, a comment from Tracy, just to say, what a great idea. I think this as well. What a great idea to use the skins. Wonderful. And presumably, Iain, we get all the nutrients which are supposed to be just under the skin. Is that part of it, the idea?
Well, it's one of the bonuses, really. I think vitamin D is one of the things you get quite a high level in the skins of potatoes. But
yeah, right. That's great. So Linda MacDonald says, I don't think I'll be throwing potato peelings out again. Great idea. So thank you for that one. Somebody asked about how much garlic. Linda asked about how much garlic do you suggest using?
Well, as I said there, it really does come down to preference and taste. Maybe like 1 or 2 cloves per portion to begin with, but when you roast the garlic, it makes it a bit sweeter, so you can sometimes use a little bit more than what you would think.
And someone else asked if we should leave the skin on. You're suggesting no, to take it off for this one?
Yeah, it's better to take it off. The skin can be quite tough. It doesn't really break down all that well in soup.
And Joe asked, will the recipes go up on the website? I know the answer is yes, but I just wonder, do you want to, either you or Craig want to point us in the direction of just exactly where to look for them?
We'll leave that one to Craig.
Yeah, so they'll go up on the blog section of our websites, which is under news in the headings at the top. But I think what we'll do is as well, I'll email you out the link so that everybody who's here today will get a link to their email address, and then you can just click and it'll take you right there.
Great.
And I think the videos will go up online as well at some point on Facebook.
Great. Well, I'll certainly be trying that recipe. It looks absolutely gorgeous. So that's the questions for that one, Craig. So over to you again.
Perfect. Okay, so now we move on to our first food waste tip and how you can try to avoid throwing out waste as well as using your potato skins for making soup. So I'm just going to share my screen with you once more. Right, here we go. So the first tip that we have for you is to make better use of your freezer. So I don't know if your freezer is anything like mine, but mine goes from being almost empty to occasionally just being packed full of something like cornettos, or there's just like mystery things at the back in weird tubs that I'm not really sure what they are. But I know that if I used my freezer better, I could have loads of tasty meals that are just ready to go, or I could even use what I've already frozen as ingredients to make new tasty meals. So here are the top tips for making better use of your freezer and thinking about Christmas time coming up as well. So in this period, in the run up to Christmas, it's a really good time to clear out your freezer and make space. So take out what's already in there, go investigating, find out what's in there and make it part of your regular meal throughout December. And that means that you'll make space for when you have all those yummy Christmas leftovers. It means you might find a tasty treat that you didn't know you had at the back. And it also means that you'll make fewer trips to the shops during this really busy Christmas period. You won't have to think about cooking. You can get on with all the other Christmas preparations. So it's a really good time to make space in your freezer and get those things eaten. Other tips are to freeze any food that you are going to freeze as soon as the food has cooled. So this will lower the risk of contamination and mean that you're freezing the food at the peak of its freshness. But it's important to remember that freezing, it doesn't kill bacteria, it just puts it on suspended animation. So the quicker you can get it into the freezer once it's cold, the less chance there is for bacteria to get in there, which will of course then still be there when you defrost it. Be sure to store your food well and remember to label it. So it's a great way to reuse those old takeaway boxes, save throwing that horrible plastic in the bin, get them used, filled up and put them in the freezer. Remember to wrap any meat that you put in there really well so it doesn't drip or anything like that. And a good tip is to use ice cube trays to pre-portion things like stocks, passatas, and herbs. You know, if your herbs go off really quickly, get them frozen into little portions and you can just put them straight into the pot whenever you're cooking. And oh yeah, about labeling, yes. So you're much more likely to eat something if you can tell what it is. So you're not going to go and investigate. You're going to put it back in the freezer. So if it's got a label on, you'll know what it is. It'll sound tasty, and you'll eat it. And what I do is I just use brown paper packing tape, stick it on the top, and you can write on it. And then of course you can recycle it whenever you're finished with it. And remember that once you've defrosted your food, it will be just as flavoursome, just as nutritious as it was whenever you froze it and you put it in there. It's a bit of a myth that if you freeze food, it just won't be as good. The only way that this would be the case is if you put it in your freezer and you left it for ages and ages and ages, then it might not taste quite as good. But generally, the food is just as good when it comes out. And the cool thing is that you can freeze just about everything. You'll be amazed what will survive defrosting. So we're going to play a little game to celebrate this. So we're going to play a little game of freeze or no freeze. So this is a bit interactive here. So what will happen is there's going to be a question that's going to pop up on all of your screens, and you've got 10 seconds to vote on your answer. Simply, can you freeze it or can you not freeze it? So let me try my very first one. Freeze or no freeze? Can you freeze cheese? Vote now, everybody. Votes are piling in, I can see them. Got 3 seconds left, and we're stopping there. So this is what we all said, 100% voting for yes. And that is true, you can freeze cheese. A lot of people are surprised by that, but obviously you guys know what you're talking about. A good tip is to grate it before you freeze it, and then you can just take out what you need whenever you're cooking with it. Okay, next question. Freeze or no freeze? Rice, what do we think? Just over half of you voted. The votes are piling in. 3 seconds. And we'll stop there. Here's the results. We've got a bit of disagreement on this one. So the answer is yes, you can freeze rice and you can freeze pasta too. Some people are a bit funny about rice. Iain, we talked about this the other day. Don't let's just say that thing you said about rice, about whether you should reheat rice.
It comes back to exactly what Craig was saying earlier, having good temperature control. So maybe rice that's been sitting out or sitting in your fridge for a day, maybe or 2 days, wouldn't freeze that. But if you cooked rice, cooled it, made something, then refrigerated it, froze it straight away, then there's no extra harm with bacteria at all, as long as you defrost it and reheat it properly.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, number 3, sticking with our Christmas theme, can you freeze mince pies? The votes are coming in. Well, a bit of disagreement. Last chance, 13 out of 17 have voted, last chance. So a couple of people saying no and a few people saying yes. Well, according to Delia, you can freeze both uncooked and cooked mince pies. And if you are going to freeze the cooked ones, then you might need to pop them in the oven just to crisp them up a little bit before serving. So yes, mince pies are definitely a yes. Freeze or no freeze? Can you freeze lettuce? Oh, that was very, very quick, that one. Big pile, look at that, everybody was ready to go. 100% saying no freeze. You are completely right. So anything with high water content, it'll freeze, but when you defrost it, it will go all mushy. So things like lettuce, broad beans, some herbs won't defrost very well. So yeah, not a good idea. And the final one. Freeze or no freeze, can you freeze eggs? Oh, this is split the vote, this one. 5 more seconds to vote. Stop it there. Well, people were thinking about that one. It took a bit of time. So this is how we voted. The most controversial one. Iain, what's the answer to this one?
You can. You just need to handle them properly. You don't just put the whole egg in the freezer and just make a mess. What you can do is if you take the eggs and split them into a bowl, and if you give them a gentle mix together, then you can freeze them in ice cube trays for small portions or larger portions, just to make like omelettes, things like that. You'll never be able to freeze an egg then make a nice fried egg out of it, but there's certainly things you can do, and you can also separate the white and the yolk, so that you've got, if you make mayonnaise or make meringues or things like that, so you can separate it and freeze, or freeze the whole egg mixed.
Thank you. So yeah, it's a great idea to freeze these things. You know, if they're getting towards the date where you're getting a bit worried about them, get them in the freezer, and that will pause them, and then they can come out later on. You know, always if we're going on holiday, we get things in the freezer before we go, because they'll be ready for us when we come back and we defrost them. And yeah, like I said, you can freeze just about anything. So the list of no-nos is shorter and easier to give you. So you can't freeze hard liquor, it won't freeze. You shouldn't really freeze creams because they will curdle when you defrost them. You shouldn't freeze veg with high water content, which I've already said. Canned food and fizzy drinks and eggs are likely to explode if you put the eggs in their whole shell, that is. And coffee, it will freeze, but it tends to absorb the smell of the freezer. So I wouldn't put coffee in the freezer, but just about anything else will work. So well done, and thank you for playing freeze or no freeze. We're going to go into Iain for the introduction for the next recipe.
Right. So this is my beloved sprouts. This recipe is just to show that Brussels sprouts don't have to just be boiled and put on the plate. They really are a great ingredient, and it can be used in a few different cuisines. This is more like a Chinese, Japanese kind of inspired dish with soy sauce and garlic and ginger and chilli, and it's just a stir fry, but the flavour's amazing. So if you have a wee look at the video, and any questions, we'll get them after the video. Right, so this dish is Asian Brussels sprouts. It's to use Brussels sprouts left over if there's any, and we have chipolatas with bacon, which also works well with the Asian flavours. So we need to start with a hot pan. The first thing that goes in is garlic and chilli. It's just vegetable oil. If you've got sesame oil, that works nicely. So wait till the pan's nice and hot. So once we've got the garlic and chilli, the next things we can put in is the pigs in blankets. Everything's cooked here, so it's just a case of warming through. Some of the sprouts in. Again, these are cooked. You could use raw ones, but they need to be chopped up if you use them. So we're wanting the sprouts to get a little bit of colour before we start adding the next layer of flavours. So we've got vinegar, we've got sugar, tomato puree and soy sauce, and some lime. At the end of the dish, it's going to be a case of adding all these flavours and trying to get them balanced. It will be almost like sweet and sour where we spice it. Right, so start with the tomato puree first. The sprouts just starting to colour. Tomato puree. Some vinegar. Just give that a wee minute. The next thing we'll add is some soy sauce. We'll put a little bit of sugar in just now, just to counteract the vinegar. Then a tiny wee splash of water. So we need to bring this back to the boil. It's good. So when this comes back up to the heat, we're looking for the sauce to reduce down and almost coat the sprouts and the sausages. A little bit of sugar in the sauce helps it to thicken up and glaze the sprouts as it cooks. And we'll just have a wee taste. Tastes a little bit salty, so that's just the soy sauce. If you just add a little bit more water. A bit more of the vinegar. A bit more of the sugar. This dish really depends on how spicy you like things, how much garlic you like. You can tailor it to your own taste. It can be served as a side dish on its own or as part of a main meal. So it doesn't take too long. We're just looking for the sauce to thicken up a wee bit, and we'll be able to put it in a bowl. Just going to have another wee taste. So, as this is just finishing off, we'll just grate a little bit of lime zest in. Lemon works as well. And we can leave that until the end. We can put a wee squeeze of fresh lime. So we're just about ready to plate up. If you can get a bowl. So I've got a bowl here. I'm just waiting on this to thicken up. Should be about 30 seconds. We'll have one final taste. To say it's spicy, sweet, sour, salty, trying to get the balance right. It's perfect. So a bowl. So we've got some sesame seeds. Some coriander. And we'll just finish with a squeeze of fresh lime. That's it. So there's the Asian sesame sprouts with the addition of pigs in blankets for this one, and that's it.
Okay, so that was our second recipe for sprouts. I like how you started that video by saying if there's any sprouts left over, because clearly there aren't in your house, but definitely is in mine.
I'll always make sure there is, so I buy more.
Okay, Jennifer, has there been any questions in the chat box?
Yes, I'm just hunting for them because my chat box has gone kind of upside down, so I'm back to the beginning again. There was one question left over from the soup, Iain. Would the soup work with thinner peelings with less potato on them?
It would just mean you would need more, and you would have to be a little bit more careful when you were roasting them because they would burn quite easily. The fact they've got extra flesh on the skin means that it can roast better.
Of course, right. So Tracy says, we've only just finished the last of Christmas 2019 mince pies. Could you bake with frozen egg?
You certainly can. It's probably one of the better uses. I mean, as I said, you wouldn't be able to like It works better for like bacon and things like that, yeah.
Okay. And Janet asks, what can you use leftover egg white for, apart from the obvious meringue?
I'll give that one to Craig because I sent him the message, the answer back. Some cakes take egg whites as an ingredient, whipped up, and soufflés also.
Yeah, yeah, good. That's a great tip for me. I so often throw out egg whites because I think I can't keep them. Lovely that I can freeze them. And then how is it, if you were going to make, let's say, a pavlova or meringue, you mustn't get any moisture in your egg white if you're going to whip them. So how is it when they defrost?
Well, I usually use like the small plastic sort of takeaway containers, and I would portion them like 6 egg whites in that portion. As long as it's in a sealed container, you shouldn't have any problem with.
I was thinking of the kind of condensation that you sometimes get when things are defrosting. So if you got moisture into your egg whites, they wouldn't whip.
It's not too bad with moisture. It's more oil you need to look out for that.
Right.
That breaks down the egg white and gives you problems.
Okay, that's a great tip. Good. Now Val asks, my most useful thing to freeze is tomato puree, easy to slice a piece off when needed. That sounds a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, great. Linda is suggesting macaroons. I take it that's a use for your egg whites. Macaroons? Yep. Yeah. Mandy says she can put lettuce in soup and freeze it that way. Does that work, Ian?
Certainly can. I wouldn't add all that much to the actual overall taste, but it's better than going in the bin.
Yeah. And Tracy's comment is there'd be no pigs in blankets left here. I just would like to add, I love the look of your stir fry. That looks absolutely gorgeous. My kind of food. Presumably it's fine to add in other things. So I wouldn't be putting in the bacon and sausage, but I could put in things like maybe red pepper strips.
Yep. Chestnuts are good.
Chestnuts would be lovely, wouldn't they?
And also like noodles and things like that. That's versatile. It's a good base to
yes.
a few things.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, that seems to be all the messages for the moment. Back to you, Craig.
Thank you. When we filmed the videos there, I got to taste the Asian sprouts, and they were so good. And the best thing about them was that they're so different to Christmas dinner that the flavors are just in a completely different direction. And that's just what you want at Christmas time. Is you want, when you've been eating turkey for days, you want something that's different. Absolutely. But it's using up the same ingredients. So fantastic. I would thoroughly recommend that recipe. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our next set of tips. And this one is all about how to think about portion control so that we're not putting too much on the plate and it ends up in the bin. So let me share my screen. So I think we all, when we're preparing for Christmas, we have that kind of nightmare scenario in our minds when the sprouts are going round, especially at Ian's house, and they run out just as they get to like great Auntie Margaret. And she never eats sprouts at any other time of the year, but if she doesn't get her 3 sprouts on a Christmas dinner plate, then Christmas is ruined, right? We have these nightmares that there's just not going to be enough food to go around. So of course, when we're doing shopping, we buy extra sprouts, we buy extra everything, just in case. And then of course, it doesn't all get eaten. And sometimes things end up in the bin. So a way to avoid that is, on the left-hand side of the screen here is a Christmas portion planner. So this is the BBC's version, but there's loads of these online. And this helps you calculate before you go shopping exactly what you need. So what it says in the middle column there is it tells you how much you need per person. So all you have to do is multiply that by the number of people you're intending to feed. And the hard part, I guess, is sticking to that once you go shopping. So you've got your list, you've got to stick to it. And that way you will avoid buying things that you don't need. And also if you could try to avoid those end of aisle offers, those 2-for-1s that make sure that we end up with way too much food. So yeah, there's loads of these online. The only thing I'd say, be careful if you are using one of these, is the turkey one. So everything else, and I looked at different ones, all kind of agreed with the portion size. The turkey, it changed depending on whether they were thinking about the whole bird, the weight of the whole bird, or whether they were thinking about the actual meat that you're going to eat. So just be careful, because obviously the difference between those two numbers is quite a lot. So you'll end up with way too much turkey. So, but everything else, all the stuffings, carrots, veg, all seem to agree. So these are really handy, and it should stop you going mad when you're at a supermarket. And then on the other side of the screen, we're thinking about portion control. So it's about trying to be realistic about what people actually eat. So on the lower side, they can always come back for seconds. In fact, that's one of the enjoyments of Christmas, is going back for more. So yeah, just think about that when you're plating up. And don't get carried away. So at a Christmas table, you would usually have people of different ages. So obviously, great granny's not going to eat as much as big Uncle Jeff, is she? So give her a smaller portion size. Don't do all the plates the same. And then another idea you could try, which might actually be quite relevant, sadly, for this year, is to try a buffet-style Christmas dinner where people serve themselves, and they're much more likely to get the portions right, and then they're going to eat what's on their plate basically, and it's not going to end up in the bin. So remember your big plate if you are going to go down that route. Okay, so that's it for tip 2. It's quite simple, just a little bit of forward planning. Now we're going to go back to Iain, and we're going to hear his introduction for the main course.
Oh, this is just a little pastries. It can be made into many shapes. It's just to show that you can use all the trimmings, the turkey, everything really can be built into little pastry parcels, and you can design it whatever way you like or whatever you've got left over. So you can have a wee look at the video, and any questions, I'll get them at the end. Right, so a lot of the leftovers we keep. Puff pastry is a great thing to try and create them into a dish. So we're going to do one vegetarian one meat one, and you'll see how they're constructed. So at the base you want to use something like stuffing, which we're using, or maybe if you're made a nut roast or something like that, something dry so the pastry doesn't get soggy. So just trying to cover the centre. So a few layers of that. So for the meat one, put the pigs in blankets. Wee bit of leftover turkey. Got a wee bit of cranberry sauce. And you can build these however you like, depending on what you've got left over. And I'll just put a wee spoonful of gravy on that also. So, the idea is we want to make cuts on the angle on each side. Now cut these bits off. So we'll start by folding this up and then go one across that way. So there. Just trying to keep can be a little bit tricky. So when you've got your pastry folded over the top, transfer it to the baking tray. Right. So the next one I'm going to do like the stuffing, the cranberry sauce, the roasted vegetables, and we're going to put a wee bit of cheese on this one as well. I'm using a mozzarella, but any sort of firm cheese would be nice. So a wee bit of the veg. Veg. So. Don't want the veg to be in too large chunks. Right, so we sprinkle with mozzarella. Say if you like blue cheese would be a nice cheese to use in here. Okay. Right, so again, just trying to fold these over so they meet in the middle. Depends how generous you are with the filling. Depends on how tricky it is to build. Right, so, second one. Right, so now just need a egg wash. So your oven needs preheated to 200 degrees. And when these go in, it will just be a case they'll be ready when the pastry is nice and golden. Just try and get egg wash as much as you can. Use a non-stick tray for this, or a piece of baking parchment. Right, these go in the oven till they're golden. So right, so the pastries are ready once the pastry is nice and golden. This is the finished product. This is the vegetarian one and the meat one. So it's like almost a whole Christmas dinner in one. I might just cut one open. Vegetarian one. It's pretty good. Meat one.
Wow, they look so good. I want to eat one right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jennifer, have we got any questions coming?
I think they're just comments really.
Perfect.
From the last one about the eggs, Tracy suggests using egg white as a face mask. There could be a double meaning on face mask in today's context, but I take it she means from the beauty point of view. Good idea. That was from Ellen, sorry. Tracy just said, talking about your parcels, they look delicious. And S, I don't know who S is, says, wow, I'm hungry. They do look absolutely fantastic. Janet says, yum. Iain, and what a great idea to cut the pastry like that. Anything I've done in puff pastry ends up with a great wodge of pastry at each end where I've turned too much thickness over. And these just look perfect. Again, just a great idea. Something I would be doing, I wouldn't be waiting for leftovers, I would just be making that because they look so good. So I don't think there's any more questions about that one. Oh, wait a minute, here's one. Val says, good idea for just one or two, rather thanking a pie. To rather Thinking about it just for one or two, because they're small, aren't they? That again, for people like me on my own, very often the problem is cooking things that are nice for just single portions. So that's ideal. Lovely idea.
Can actually be made even smaller for like sort of almost like bite size, like just turnovers, like samosa sort of shapes.
Absolutely. Yeah, great. Right, on with the next one.
Perfect. So I think we are going to go to our next tip to prevent food waste, and I think Iain's going to take us through that one. So let me just...
Right, so the on products you'll see use by dates, best befores, displays, till, so it's a little bit unclear. So a use by date really refers to the fact that the product could become harmful after the use by. But you need to look at it, smell, touch, to be able to recognise that something isn't out of date, because you have to remember these dates are put on things by companies just as a sort of guide, but you need to be quite careful when you sort of meats or fish. But certainly in the vegetables, lettuce, all these sort of things, use by dates are a guide, and as long as you can sort of judge for yourself if they're okay, you should learn to do that. So the best before date means the sort of quality could be reduced a little bit, but there's no any harm involved in eating anything after its best before date.
So the use by is more about safety, yeah?
Yeah, use by is more for safety, the best before is more for quality, and like display till probably more a visual, the visual appearance of the product might suffer more. Best before bread's probably the best example for something that's still good after its best before date. The amount of bread we have to deal with at Greener Kirkcaldy, because it's past its best before date, and it really is such a waste. We're going to be looking at things to do something about that. And I think the other common best before, well, use by date, you get in salad bags and little stir fry tubs. Not only are they in plastic, but they've got a date before they're actually out of date. So you're wasting the food and the container. That's quite bad, and worth looking out for. Salad and things like that, look to see if it looks okay, smell it, feels okay, then it is okay.
Perfect. And the bonus top tip that I've got written down is that you can actually freeze stuff right up to the use by date. So if it is getting close to the date, you know you're not going to eat it, you can still get it in the freezer if the use by date hasn't passed, and it'll be fine.
I'll add something to that. If you have a piece of raw chicken, for example, and you freeze it, when you defrost it, if you cook it, you then can freeze it as a cooked product. That's some people, well, you can only freeze things once, but after it's been through another cooking process, it's okay to freeze again. And again, as long as you reheat things to piping hot, then it's perfectly safe to eat. And that goes quite a long way. If you've got some sausages in your fridge, if you cook them the day before they go off, then you now have a cooked product that will be okay in your fridge for 2 days, or you can freeze it for another time. So it's good to be sort of clear on what you can actually do, and it makes your food go a lot further.
Yeah, and it just says at the bottom there as well that we can ignore the display until and sell by dates, because these are all about managing stock for the retailer. So these are more dates that confuse people. But
the whole thing's confusing, really.
The whole thing is confusing, and a lot of food goes in the bin because people don't want to risk it. So it's just knowing that difference, isn't it? And that can save a whole lot of waste.
Yeah, definitely.
Save you a lot of money too.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this last slide here is just to show you that how we use food that comes to us that's maybe past its best before date, but it's still perfectly edible. So a lot of the food that we get for our community fridge, it comes from supermarkets, it's donated, and in the past it would have ended up probably in the bin. But now it gets put in our fridge and people can come and help themselves. Some of it you see in the photo there gets turned into ready meals by Iain and his team, and it goes and gets eaten. So it's a really cool thing, the community fridge. So you can pop in on Thursdays and Fridays and help yourself to whatever's in there. And we get a mix of stuff from sweets to nice vegetables to all sorts of things, whatever you can think of. We've had, at one point that fridge was filled with sprouts as well. And then on the right hand side is our community meals takeaway. So on a Tuesday from 3:30 to 5:30, Iain and his team rustle up a 3-course meal just for whoever would like to come and collect it. And it's on a takeaway basis at the moment, just with everything that's going on. But it's always amazing and it's always different. And again, that's with food that is maybe past its best before date, might have ended up in the bin in the past, but now we've got these amazing things that we can do with it now, just with a bit of agreement with the supermarkets. So yeah, do pop in if you want to get some food from us. Right then. So I think we've got one more recipe to do, Iain, and that's the pudding course. But you're just going to talk us through this one. We've got no video, right?
Yeah. Well, this is like something that you can use for all your little sweet treats. The sort of guide and recipe for this will be available on our website. So the best way to do it is if you get like a loaf tin and line it with a bit of greaseproof paper, and you can lay a layer of maybe fruit or nuts, anything that you've got left over, sweets work well also. Then if you just get soft scoop ice cream, put it in the fridge for 15 minutes till it's a little bit soft into a bowl, break up all these leftover mince pies and gently sort of fold it through, then pack it straight back into the loaf tin, then put it in the freezer for 2 to 3 hours. You'll be able to turn it out and it'll be like a nice sort of shape that you can cut a slice with the top end of fruit and nuts or whatever else that you have for on top of it. It's just an easy way to make quite a nice white dessert. You can drizzle some sauce over the top or garnish it with anything that you like. It's quite a nice dessert. And you can look into maybe, there's recipes out there for no churn ice cream. So it's basically a case of mixing like evaporated milk and cream. Then you just basically put it in the freezer and you make your own ice cream as well. There's quite a few easy recipes out there for that. We'll make sure one of them's on the website also.
Okay, so are there any updates in the chat box, Jennifer? Anything else? Get your questions in now, folks, about anything else you want to ask Iain as well.
Joe Graham asks, have you any advice for freezing cooked goose, stuffing, sprouts, etc. for Christmas too, when our daughter can travel?
Well, I mean, apart from the freeze, if you are going to freeze goose, it could end up, it wouldn't be quite as nice texture-wise as what it was the first time. But certainly make sure that you wrap the meat either in like a freezer bag with all the air out, so the actual meat itself doesn't get freezer burn. But just carefully cook it after it's been frozen. Your vegetables, you can keep them. They work frozen. I would suggest with the sprouts, if you're going to freeze them, only cook them lightly. Then you can freeze them. Then when they come out, they've still got cooking to go. So there's quite a ways, and all the other little tricks that we showed you today. You might be able to make a Christmas meal out of your leftovers.
Okay, there aren't any other questions at the moment. I would like to ask you about using ice cream from the freezer. So if you take it out, obviously you have to let it soften in order to scoop it out. And then is it okay, you put the lid back on, put it back in the freezer? I always have a little bit of a worry around that, because you're not supposed to take things out of the freezer and refreeze them. So what's your kind of take on that, Iain?
Well, you're not going to be raising the, I mean, the problem occurs when food reaches a specific temperature. above 5 degrees, below 62 degrees. That's called the danger zone. So actually at minus 15, you're not going to be any harmful bacteria. It's just a way of being able to mould it back into so there's no danger there.
Right. So even to do that more than once, is it okay? Take it out, use it, put it back, take it out, use it, put it back.
Well, yeah, well, as you would with ice cream.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I do it, but I always have a little bit of anxiety.
No, don't worry about that. No, definitely not. There's no problem there.
Good, okay. Well, I don't think there are any more questions unless...
Chance, everybody, get your questions in.
We must have done our job, Craig.
That's it. You've solved everybody's cooking problem. No problem.
Oh, cool.
There have been comments to say great ideas and thank you. I think everybody has been clearly immensely impressed and very grateful. Well, here we are, we're getting some now. So Maureen says thank you, lots of info and ideas I'll definitely remember going forward. Linda, likewise, I've really enjoyed this session. Thank you so much. Mandy, oh, they're flashing in now. My ice cream doesn't last that long. Good for you, Mandy. And Tracy says, it's been great, got lots of ideas, thank you. Lots of thank yous. That's lovely, Iain. Thank you very much.
Nice to hear.
Some smiley faces coming through now as well. Well, I'll just take this opportunity then to say thank you to everybody for coming, and I hope that we have given you some new ideas this Christmas, both in terms of recipes and in terms of ideas to kind of reduce that waste that we talked about. And the recipes will be on the website, in the news section, and we'll release the videos on social media, and I think the whole event will probably go up on YouTube, and I'll also email you the links to these things too. Just to say, all the attendees will also receive a survey, so we'd be really grateful if you could fill in the survey and let us know what you thought and whether this information has helped you, and it also helps us to improve our events, and it'll help us when we go to our funders and we say this is what we've done. So if you could fill it in, that would be amazing. Thank you to Iain and to Jennifer for manning the chat box. That's really fantastic. Iain, if you've got anything else to add?
No, just thanks for coming, and keep a watch for what we're doing and the way you food. Okay, well, I'll just do a quick plug for the community meals. So if you'd like to come and get a 3-course meal every Tuesday between 3:30 and 5:30, just come down to Green Kirkcody's building at 8 East Fergus Place in Kirkcaldy, and you can help yourself. It's a pay what you feel basis. And also the community fridge. It's always exciting to see what's going to be in there when you turn up. So that's open on Thursdays from 3 till 4:30 and on Fridays from 9:30 till 12. So you can just come and help yourself to any food. It's all about preventing it getting chucked. That's what the fridge is all about. We also have another cooking event on the 14th of January. So if you enjoyed this one, then do sign up for that one. That's all about meat-free cooking. And we're on a similar format, so we've got some more filming to do. So yeah, do look out for that one too. And I'm just going to leave the final word to the Food Waste Fairy, and hopefully she'll make you feel a little bit Christmassy as well. Thank you very much.
The food that was less and the family was fed. They'd all eaten too much and gone up to bed. The food that was left out on the side, the food that they'd cooked and had eaten with pride. They'd left out the turkey and half was still there. There were carrots and parsnips, did nobody care? The great food waste fairy was upset by the sight. She hated food waste, especially on Christmas night. So down in the kitchen she made such a clatter. The family went down to see what was the matter. "What's the matter?" she cried. "Have you seen all this food?" But then an idea came that lifted her mood. The fairy looked round and assessed what was left. Then she opened her mouth and she took a deep breath. "Make room in your freezer leading up to this date, as lots can be frozen and still will taste great. The meat you have cooked should be frozen and stored. Just don't refreeze cooked meat that's already thawed." The family looked shocked. "You can freeze all of those?" "Yes, like I said, most things can be froze. If you don't want to freeze it, they'll go in the fridge, in a plastic container with an airtight lid. This will keep your food fresh for several days, for you to reuse in a number of ways. In the future, just make a food shopping list. Only buy what you need and nothing you'll miss. Now get storing, my dears. I won't do it myself. I'm a food waste fairy, not a food waste elf." The family then started to store all their food, and the food waste fairy left in a good mood. And with glee she sung out as she flew out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, for there's no food waste tonight.
Okay, thank you everybody. That's it. Good night. Thanks for coming.
Right, thanks.